Namaste, all you fragrant people, and welcome to yet another podcast with Om Incense Show with DJ, a show that helps you increase your incense quotient. So, if you are an incense enthusiast, consider subscribing. So, we are reading again today from Suzanne Fisher-Rizzi's book, The Complete Incense Book, and today we'll read about what were the effective incense burning substances that the ancient Japanese people used. And if you are somebody from Japan, or if you've been to Japan, or if you're somebody living in Japan, you might just let us know that, whatever the ingredients that they've mentioned here, that she's mentioned here in her book, is it still used, or what is the status like? But before we get ahead, I might just want you to know that treat this as a podcast and grab your favorite beverage and snacks, or just curl up in a blanket and relax while I give you company. So this is page number 204 from the book, and we're reading about the effective incense burning substances from Japan. And of course, the first one is agar wood, Aquileria agalocha. According to legend, a large piece of agar wood washed up on the shores of the island of Awaji during the 7th century AD. The wood was buried, and over time, it developed a beautiful aroma. Prince Shotoku presented this wood to the emperor, who was so taken by the fragrance that from then on, he imported this aromatic wood from China or Korea. This agar wood, ginkgo, still plays an important part in Japanese kodo ceremonies. But the Japanese also used it in incense sticks and pellets, as well as in incense sachets and similar objects. For kodo ceremonies, people in Japan usually use agar wood, which comes in many different qualities, and sandalwood. They use both individually with nothing added. In the West, agar wood is almost unknown. If you ask people in Japan about the origin of the tree, they will usually tell you that the exact origin is still a secret. If we trace the fragrance to its homeland, we will find ourselves in the rainforests of Assam, Bhutan, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia. So Assam is in India. It's an eastern state of India. The agar tree belongs to the Thymilaceae family. Its branches are like the outstretched wings of an eagle. Oh, before we go ahead, and there's a lot of agar wood cultivation that has started in Assam on a big scale, because that climate is very well suited to this plant. And earlier we of course had those old ancient trees, but now because they are slowly getting used up, people are now really getting into cultivating agar wood in big patches in Assam. So it's something that it's going to benefit us all in the long run. The Japanese only use agar wood for incense burning when it has been infected by fungus, Aspergillus and Fusarium. This resin produces the fragrant substance. The more resin the wood contains, the more aromatic the fragrance, and the heavier it becomes. Truly, good agar wood will not float, which is why the Japanese call it ginkgo, the sinking wood. However, many other factors determine the fragrance of the wood. The location, the microclimate, and the condition of the soil can all play a role. The fragrance of the wood is different from that of the branches or the roots. When an old tree is uprooted by lightning, mudslides, etc., plants and leaves will eventually cover it. This starts the fermentation process. Sometimes a piece of wood is covered by plants or water for hundreds of years. The pressure compresses the resin and makes it compact. People in Japan consider these old and partially fossilized pieces the purest incense burning wood. Such pieces are very expensive. Prolonged exposure to soil or water causes decay, but the aromatic resin pieces are indestructible and remain behind. Agar wood has a balsamic, ambergris, woody, deep fragrance. To experience the many nuances of this unique incense-burning substance is like a journey on the road to spiritual perfection. In its original state, the wood is light gray. It becomes darker when exposed to fungus and the fermentation process. Unfortunately, in Asia, people use dyes to treat less valuable wood to make it look like agar wood. If you are really interested in the best quality of this precious and mysterious wood, buy shavings from a traditional incense burning manufacturer in Japan. The quality of the fragrance is divided into 6 categories. The names of the categories are traditional groups or communities in Japanese society. So the first is Chiara, a dignified, gentle fragrance with a slightly bitter tone. It smells like an elegant and graceful aristocrat. Rakoku, a tangy, biting fragrance that reminds one of sandalwood. It is generally somewhat bitter and smells like a warrior. Manaka, a bright, tempting fragrance, changeable like the emotions of a beautiful woman. Nice one. Manabao. Its fragrance is usually sweet, but sometimes rough and boorish like a farmer. Sticky remnants of oil left on a mica plate are similar to the Manabao fragrance. Sumotara. This has a sour fragrance at the beginning and the end. It is easily mistaken for Chiara. Sometimes the fragrance has a somewhat offensive and uncouth background. It has the scent of a servant who pretends to be an aristocrat. Sasora, a cool and somewhat sour fragrance. Good quality Sasora can be mistaken for Chiara, particularly at the beginning when the wood just begins to heat up. Sometimes it is light and gentle, almost unnoticeable. It reminds one of the fragrance of a monk. Burn agar wood on mica plates in tiny splinters. Listen to the fragrance and the story that the wood tells about mysterious forests. The fragrance of agar wood is deeply relaxing and balancing. In 1993, Japanese scientists studied its effects and determined that it is a strong sedative and extends sleep periods. When you burn agar wood in the evening, the fragrance is deeply relaxing. So this same process of fermentation which lends the tree its nice resin is what also happens with Palo Santo. The wood of it is considered better once it has been dead and on the ground for a few years. And the same thing also happens to Cedrus deodara. So that Devdar tree, the Devdar wood, especially in the Himalayas that we have here, The tree that has been dead and been on the ground for a few years, that's when it develops that resin, which is like really good, very beneficial, and it is heavily used in the Ayurvedic medicine industry. Okay, so the next one is sandalwood, Santalum album. You can find a more detailed discussion of this aromatic wood in the chapter on India, so I think we've already done that. In Japan, people use a particularly delicate quality that is sold in small square slabs packed beautifully. You can cut small splinters from these slabs and place them on a mica plate for burning. A warm, sweet fragrance soon spreads through the room. The fragrance is relaxing and harmonizing. It strokes the soul and senses. Although the Japanese don't use sandalwood for kodo ceremonies, they enjoy it by itself in the evening alone or in a group. The substance far outweighs the simple fragrance of the essential oil of sandalwood. Then we have Japanese anise, Illicium anisatum, Styranis, that's what it says in the bracket. Japanese anise trees grow in China and Vietnam and belong to the family of the magnolia plant Illiciaceae. In Japan, it is honored as a sacred tree. It grows to a height of 65 feet and its yellow flowers are similar to narcissus flowers shaped like an 8-pointed star. For incense burning purposes, you crush the dried stars. When burned, their fragrance is similar to that of anise. Added to a mixture in small amounts, it provides a warm, sweet anise fragrance. People use the pulverized, fragrant bark of this tree called shikimi, that is Buddha tree, for incense burning purposes and as a body powder. People believe the fragrance creates a dignified atmosphere in temples. Cinnamon. The peeled bark of the cinnamon tree, which belongs to the laurel plant family, Lauraceae, is added to different incense burning mixtures in powdered form. It gives these mixtures a typical warm, sweet cinnamon fragrance. The Japanese use Chinese and Ceylonese cinnamon as well as the fragrance from the native laurel tree, which also has a slight cinnamon-like scent. The Japanese cinnamon tree, Cinnamomum camphora glossensis, produces cinnamon-like fragrant substances that have a slight camphor-like undertone. If you want to make your own Japanese incense burning mixtures, you can simply use powdered cinnamon from the kitchen. Better yet, use a piece of freshly crushed bark. For incense burning, the Japanese use the branches, bark, leaves, and dried flower buds of the cassia cinnamon tree, an evergreen plant that grows all over Southeast Asia. Everything smells sweet, warm, and has the typical cinnamon aroma. Its effects are warming, relaxing, and calming. In general, cinnamon fragrance opens the heart and works well in sensuous incense burning mixtures. Incense burning with cinnamon and cinnamon sticks is very popular in Asia because in addition to the effects we've already discussed, it keeps insects at bay. Cloves, Syzygium aromaticum. Cloves, one of the most well-known of all spices, belongs to the family of the myrtle plants, the Myrtaceae. With few exceptions, we only use the pulverized dried flower buds for for incense burning purposes. These have a spicy, warm fragrance. Cloves increase the fragrance of incense burning mixtures and energize them. They stimulate creativity and intuition. In Asia, people believe that cloves free us from negative thoughts. Mixed with other substances, they can have aphrodisiac effects. Like cinnamon, cloves are very popular in Asia as incense sticks because they also repel insects. And then on one of the pages what she's given is there are some other incense burning mixtures. So there's something called cinnamon, then we have rose mallow seeds, agarwood in 3 qualities, then we have camphor, dried prunes, and that's it. So those are the incense ingredients. We have some more, and then we have some incense recipes as well. So we'll be doing that in the next episode. For now, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode and you learned something from it. If you think somebody else can learn something from it too, or maybe they can just enjoy the podcast, you might just share it with them. If you liked it, give it a like. This is Tolly Jha here, and I thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Till we meet again next, take very good care of yourself. Namaste.